I weaponized my boyfriend's best friend to get his attention, and now my life is a crater. Okay, look, I know I screwed up. I get it. But can someone please tell me when the punishment for a single, stupid joke became this? Complete and utter annihilation? Because that's what this feels like. My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, I guess, Leif, he isn't a yeller. In the 3 years we've been together, he's never raised his voice. He's what I used to call a disapparator. When he's angry or stressed from his job as a surveyor, or when I do something that ticks him off, he just vanishes. Not physically, not at first. He vanishes into the garage. That garage is his sanctuary, his fortress of solitude. The sharp, clean scent of sawdust and wood stain is his invisibility cloak. He'll be out there for hours, sometimes until I've gone to bed, hunched over some piece of maple or oak, meticulously crafting a perfect joint with a level of tender focus he used to reserve for me. The silence that bleeds from under the garage door is louder and colder than any argument we could ever have. It's a silence that says, "You are not worth my words right now." And here's the kicker, the part that makes my chest tighten just thinking about it. My last ex, the one who really did a number on me, was a grandmaster of the silent treatment. He could go a week without acknowledging my existence in our tiny apartment. It didn't just end our relationship, it hollowed me out. I swore to myself I would never, ever feel that invisible again. I told Leif this. On our third date, I laid my cards on the table. I can handle fighting, I told him. I cannot handle being ignored. He held my hand, looked me straight in the eye, and promised he understood. But apparently, his promises have a sawdust-flavored loophole. So when he retreated into his workshop for 3 straight nights last week over something trivial, I think I left a wet towel on the bed. That old, familiar panic started clawing its way up my throat. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't spend one more night feeling less important than a half-finished spice rack. I had to do something. I had to make him see me. That weekend felt like wading through ice water. Every attempt at conversation was met with a one-word answer, a non-committal grunt from behind a phone screen. Every time I tried to touch his arm, he'd subtly shift, creating a chasm of a few inches between us that felt like a mile. By Sunday evening, I was a frayed nerve ending, buzzing with anxiety and resentment. I finally cornered him at the threshold of the garage, the cold concrete floor seeping through my socks. The sharp, clean scent of cedar was already wrapping around him like a protective shroud. "Leif, can we please just talk about this?" I begged, my voice sounding thin and pathetic even to my own ears. "I feel like I don't even exist." "It's been days." He didn't turn around. He just paused, his hand resting on a complex-looking sander, its cord coiled like a dormant snake. "I'm just trying to decompress, Joe. I need some space." Space, that word. It hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. It wasn't a request, it was a dismissal. A politely worded go away. It was the exact same word my ex used before a week of agonizing silence. In that moment, standing in the doorway of his fortress, something inside me didn't just break. It warped into something ugly. The desperation and the hurt curdled into a bitter, reckless resolve. If he wouldn't give me his attention willingly, I would hijack it. I would make him scared to lose me. My plan, if you can even call something so reactive and idiotic a plan, was born from that toxic mix of fear and fury. And the unwilling centerpiece was Weston. Sweet, dependable Weston. He's been Leif's best friend since they were kids, the kind of guy who would help you move a couch in the middle of a heat wave without a single complaint. He's a golden retriever in human form, all loyalty and goofy smiles. And that's precisely why I chose him. In my twisted logic, it was a safe bet. Weston would never, ever cross a line with me, and Leif knew that. So, I figured any flirtation would be so obviously manufactured that Leif would have to see it for what it was. A desperate, clumsy cry for attention from his girlfriend. It started small, testing the waters. At a group dinner, I made sure to sit next to Weston, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. I'd text him a funny meme while we were all sitting at the same table, making sure Leif saw the shared, silent smile between us. I started referencing inside jokes that were variations of things only Leif and I shared. Little, poisonous twists on our history. For example, Leif and I once got hopelessly lost on a hike and survived on a single bag of trail mix, which we named Gourmet Mountain Rations. A week later, I posted a picture of a fancy trail mix bag on my Instagram story, tagging Weston with the caption, "Next time we go exploring at Weston, we're upgrading our ration game." It was pathetic. It was transparent, and I told myself it was harmless. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't even really flirting. I was just holding up a giant, flashing sign that said, "Look at me." But Leif, he didn't seem to look. Or rather, he looked, and then looked away with a deliberate emptiness that was far more maddening than anger. I'd see a flicker in his eyes, a slight tightening of his jaw, and then nothing. He would meticulously turn his full attention to someone else, asking them about their work with an infuriating level of focus, leaving me dangling in the awkward social space I'd created. His passive aggression was an art form. He wouldn't acknowledge my game, therefore robbing me of the reaction I craved. And the more he ignored my clumsy provocations, the more frantic and reckless my little performance became. I just had to push a little harder. The tipping point was a backyard barbecue at our friend's house. It was one of those perfect, late summer evenings, tiki torches glowing, and the air thick with the smell of grilled burgers. But for me, the atmosphere was suffocating. Leif was in a classic Leif at a party mode, polite, charming to everyone else, and treating me with a detached courtesy you'd show a distant cousin. He'd fetch me a drink but walk away before I could say thank you. He'd laugh at a group story, but his eyes would slide right past mine. I felt like a ghost at my own life's party. I'd had 2 glasses of cheap, sugary rosé on an empty stomach, and the alcohol was fanning the flames of my resentment. I watched him across the lawn, effortlessly chatting with a circle of people, and the injustice of it all felt white-hot. Here he was, the life of the party, while I was being punished for wanting my own boyfriend to talk to me. That's when I saw Weston walking over to the dessert table, and the final, fatal piece of my stupid plan clicked into place. I walked up to him, putting on my brightest, most carefree smile. "Hey you," I said, loud enough for Leif's group to hear. Weston smiled back, his usual warm, uncomplicated grin. "Hey Joe, you grabbing some of this cheesecake? It's epic." "In a minute," I said, leaning in conspiratorially. "I was just going to say, next time you make that caramel apple pie, you have to save me a piece first. Don't let Leif know, it'll be our little secret." The words hung in the air, sparkling with malice I hadn't even fully intended. It was a precision strike. The caramel apple pie wasn't just any dessert. It was his mother's recipe, the one she'd handwritten for him on a grease-stained index card after she passed away. It was the first thing he ever cooked for me, his hands clumsy with the flour, his brow furrowed in concentration. It was the dessert we made together every fall. It was our thing. It was sacred. And I had just taken that sacred thing, that beautiful, private piece of our history, and casually gifted a twisted version of it to his best friend in public. I watched Leif's face for the explosion. For the jealousy, the anger, the hurt, anything. I was braced for a storm, but it never came. He stopped talking mid-sentence. His friends' smiles faltered as they glanced between us. Leif's eyes met mine across the lawn. There was no emotion in them. None. It was like looking at polished gray stones. He held my gaze for a long, terrifying second, and then he blinked once. He turned back to his friends, picked up the thread of his conversation as if I hadn't spoken, and took a calm sip of his beer. The utter, absolute nullification of my existence was more terrifying than any fight he could have started. I felt my blood run cold. I hadn't just pushed a button, I had flipped a switch. The drive home was a masterclass in suffocating silence. The air in the car was so thick with unspoken words it felt hard to breathe. I kept glancing at Leif, his profile illuminated by the passing streetlights, but his expression was completely blank. He just stared straight ahead, his hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. It was like driving with a stranger. When we got back to the apartment, he walked in, went straight to the bathroom, and started his nightly routine. He brushed his teeth. He changed into a t-shirt. He didn't say a word. I stood in the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs, waiting for the dam to break. But it never did. He got into bed, turned his back to me, and that was it. The next morning, it was almost normal, which was somehow even more unsettling. He was already up when I woke, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. He said, "Morning," as I walked into the kitchen, his voice even and flat. He had even made coffee for me. It was a bizarre, chilling pantomime of our life. I went to work in a daze, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach all day. I kept replaying the moment at the barbecue, the deadness in his eyes. I told myself I was overreacting. We'd have a huge fight tonight, I'd apologize, we'd work through it. We had to. But when I got home that evening, the apartment was different. Quieter. The first thing I noticed was the empty space on the hook by the door where his work jacket always hung. Then I saw the gap on the shoe rack. My stomach dropped. I walked into the living room. His laptop was gone from the side table. The stack of surveying journals he kept on the bookshelf had vanished. With a growing sense of panic, I rushed to the bedroom. I threw open the closet door. His side was completely empty. Hangers, bare and mocking, were all that was left. His shirts, his jeans, the stupid hoodie he loved that I always stole, all gone. I stumbled to the bathroom. His toothbrush was gone. His deodorant, his razor, the specific face wash he used. It was a systematic, surgical removal of his existence from our shared space. The final stop was the garage. I flung the door open, half expecting to find him there, waiting. But it was empty and sterile. His workbench was wiped clean. The half-finished cabinet he was building for his sister was gone. Every tool, every screw, every scrap of wood had been taken. He hadn't just packed a bag. He had evacuated his life from mine. There was no note, no text, no missed call. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I tried to call him. It went straight to voicemail. I tried to send a text. A small gray notification popped up, message failed to send. He'd blocked me. I checked Instagram, Facebook, everything. I was gone. Erased. In the space of a single workday, he had ghosted me so completely it was as if he'd never existed at all. And in the crushing, deafening silence of our empty apartment, I finally, truly understood. This wasn't the silent treatment. This was a verdict. For 3 days, I lived in a fog of pure, unadulterated panic. My apartment, once a home, felt like a crime scene where the body had simply vanished. I alternated between hysterical crying fits that left me gasping for air on the living room floor, and a frantic, obsessive need to fix it. I left him rambling, tearful voicemails from my work phone, my voice cracking as I pleaded with his automated greeting. I sent him long, desperate emails, pouring out apologies and explanations that I'm sure went directly to a spam folder. I was losing my mind, pacing the silent rooms, picking up objects he'd left behind, a forgotten book, a single sock under the bed, and holding them like sacred relics. Finally, in a moment of utter desperation where the silence was becoming a physical weight crushing me, I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have. I called Weston. He picked up on the second ring, his voice wary and stripped of its usual warmth. "Jocelyn." "Weston, thank God," I gasped, the words tumbling out of me in a chaotic torrent. "I need you to help me. I need to talk to Leif." "He's gone, Weston. He took all his stuff, he blocked me on everything, and I don't know what to do. I'm going crazy here. Please, you have to tell me where he is. I just need to talk to him." There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him take a deep, weary breath. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold, heavy with a disappointment that felt infinitely worse than any shouting match could have. "Jocelyn," he said, his tone flat. "You really don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" I asked, my voice rising in a squeak of frustration and disbelief. It was a joke, a stupid, stupid joke that went too far. It didn't mean anything. "A joke," he repeated, and for the first time, I heard a spark of raw anger in his voice. "You think that was a joke? Leif's entire world, his whole moral compass, is built on 2 things, trust and loyalty. It's all he ever talks about, it's everything to him. His last girlfriend cheated on him, and it nearly broke him. He swore he'd never be with someone he couldn't trust implicitly again, and you didn't just break that trust. You used me, his best friend since we were 5, as the weapon to do it. You took the memory of his mom, something so precious to him, and you defiled it. In public. You didn't do it to get his attention, Jocelyn. You did it to hurt him where you knew he was most vulnerable. And you succeeded." His words were like a series of clean, sharp slaps to the face. Every excuse I had built, every self-pitying justification I had clung to for the past week, crumbled into dust. He was right. I hadn't been trying to get his attention. I had been trying to punish him for making me feel invisible, and I had chosen the cruelest, most calculated way to do it. The real gut punch, the final, devastating reality check, came a few days later. I was finally starting the soul-crushing task of clearing out the last remnants of him from the apartment. I decided to tackle the closet, a space that now felt cavernously empty. As I was pulling out my own clothes to reorganize, my fingers brushed against something hard tucked away in the back corner of the top shelf, hidden behind my bulky winter sweaters. It was a small, wooden box, unfinished. The dovetail joints were perfect, the sanding immaculate, but it hadn't been stained or sealed yet. It was unmistakably his work. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic, painful rhythm. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of crumpled tissue paper, was not a piece of jewelry, but a single, folded piece of paper. It was a receipt from a local, independent jeweler, a place we'd once window shopped at on a whim. It was a payment plan for an engagement ring. A beautiful, simple solitaire, the exact one I had pointed out that day. He'd been making payments for 6 months. The final one was scheduled for the following week. That project in the garage, the one I resented, the one that made me feel so abandoned, he was making a ring box. For me, weeks have passed. The raw, screaming panic has subsided, leaving behind a dull, constant ache in the center of my chest. I called my friend Chloe tonight, plastering on my best, I'm thriving voice. Honestly, I'm fine. Better even, I said, swirling the cheap wine in my glass as I stared at my reflection in the dark living room window. If you think about it, he did me a favor. I mean, a man that fragile who can't even take a simple joke? That's a huge red flag. Seriously, I dodged a bullet. Chloe murmured some vague words of support, and I kept the act up until we hung up. The moment the call ended, the fake smile slid off my face. The bravado evaporated, leaving me hollow. I put the phone down, the silence of the apartment rushing back in to fill the void. My hand, as if with a mind of its own, reached for the coffee table. My fingers closed around the small, unfinished wooden box. It's rough to the touch, a constant, tangible reminder of my failure. I clutch it tightly, the sharp corners digging into my palm, and just sit there in the dark. As the silent, hot tears I swore I wouldn't cry anymore start to fall, soaking into the pale, waiting wood.